Dear God,
Drahý Bože,
I want to thank you for this Sabbath day.
chcem Ti poďakovať za sobotu.
We've had already many presentations,
Už sme mali veľa prezentácií,
a lot to take in.
mnohé, čo treba vstrebať.
I want to thank you for the good fellowship we have and the good discussions we have here at the camp.
Ďakujeme Ti za to spoločenstvo a dobrú diskusiu, ktorú sme tu mali.
The last presentation of Elder Marco,
Tá posledná prezentácia staršieho Marka.
I want to thank you for the blessings we have received so far.
Ďakujem Ti za požehnania, ktoré sme zatiaľ dostali.
I pray that you watch over us this hour as well.
Prosíme, aby si na nás dával pozor v tejto hodinu.
Jesus'
V mene
name,
Ježiša. Amen.
So, initially I was planning to have 3 presentations,
Najprv som mal mať 3 prezentácie,
but it was suggested that it would be good to have a 4th and last one.
a bol návrh, že by bolo dobre mať ešte poslednú, štvrtú.
Thank you so much. I'm going to use this as a question and answer.
A použijem to ako otázky a odpovede.
I'm planning to do a summary and a question and answer, but I think I'll use the questions to make up a summary.
Spravím zhrnutie a otázky a odpovede, ale tie otázky použijem na to, aby som mohol spraviť to zhrnutie.
So, several people have been asking me
Niekoľkí ľudia sa ma pýtali
about the internal issues in the movement.
ohľadne vnútorných vecí v hnutí.
What's your position on the internal messages in the movement at the moment?
A čo tie vnútorné posolstvá v hnutí, ktoré vlastne máme mať?
And I didn't present that.
To som neprezentoval.
Do that line.
Nerobil som tú líniu.
I was asked to, what about Syria?
A pýtali sa ma ohľadne Sýrie.
What about January 6th?
A čo 6. január?
And I think all those questions are valid and they're good questions.
A toto sú dobré otázky, majú svoju platnosť,
But they're not part of my story.
ale oni nie sú súčasťou môjho príbehu.
They belong to a different story in the same history.
Oni patria k inému príbehu.
So I cannot use my line, let's call it the Ukraine line,
Nemôžem používať tú moju líniu, keď prídeme na líniu Ukrajiny
and say something about January 6th.
a povedať niečo o 6. januári.
Because I think that's an internal USA story.
To je príbeh, ktorý sa týka vnútorne Spojených štátov.
And that's a different line. You can make a line of it.
A to je iná línia.
And I'm sure it's part of a line.
Som si istý, že je to súčasťou tej línie.
But at least this weekend, I'm here to support, or my specialty is the Ukraine line at the moment.
Ale tento víkend vlastne to, na čo som sa chcel zamerať, je ukrajinská línia.
And perhaps we'll come back to those questions later.
Možno sa k týmto otázkam vrátime neskôr,
But I don't think at this point I'm here to have very strong opinions on the internal issues.
ale nemyslím si, že v tomto bode som tu na to, aby som mal silné názory na tie také vnútorné témy.
So one of the things that I talked about regarding Panion
Jedna z vecí, o ktorých som hovoril ohľadne Pánia,
was that I suggested it starts in February
bolo to, že začína to vo februári
and it ends in October.
a končí v oktobri.
And one of the questions is,
Jedna z otázok je,
Panium is beneventum,
Pánium je beneventum.
and the beneventum, the elephant turned back on their own arms. The elephants of Tyrus destroyed their own army.
A tí sloni Píra vlastne zničili tú jeho vlastnú armádu.
And I think I addressed that, but perhaps a little shortly or...
Myslím, že som o tom hovorila, ale možno len tak v krátkosti.
I think Elder Marco's presentation of this morning touched nicely on that.
Myslím, že prezentácia staršieho Marka sa k tomu tak pekne viaže.
He said, these are my own words, but he said, the king of the south, Russia, specialty, so to say, was information war.
On povedal, že zameranie toho kráľa juhu bola vlastne informačná vojna.
And the USA for a long time didn't even pay attention to it.
A Spojené štáty tomu dlho ani nevenovali pozornosť.
So they lost battle after battle after battle.
A strácali jednu bitku za druhou.
So the elephant is a specialty of the king of the south.
Čiže tí sloni, to je špecialita kráľa juhu.
And this elephant, I think that is not even my invention. I think it's even Elder Tess saying it already. It's not something new.
A toto nie je niečo nové, o tom hovorila aj staršia Tess.
Is that 2021 is the point where the USA starts to be the winner in this war, in this information warfare.
2021 je bod, kedy USA vlastne sa stávajú takým víťazom v tejto informačnej vojne.
So it's the point where they, I don't know how to express it, I guess I said it. Where the USA starts to win those battles.
Je to bod, kde oni začínajú vyhrávať tie bitky.
And that's by the decisions that Biden takes.
A to je rozhodnutiami, ktoré robí Biden.
He receives lots of information of intelligences.
Dostal mnoho informácií od bezpečnostných zložiek.
And he decides to share them with the allies.
A rozhodne sa ich zdieľať so spojencami.
And to push a narrative, a story to the world.
A pretlačiť príbeh svetu,
that Russia cannot be trusted is not a reasonable partner.
že Rusku sa nedá dôverovať a nie je to rozumný partner.
Since Putin is president in 2000,
Odkedy je Putin prezidentom v roku 2000,
all the way to, you could say today,
až do dnes,
he has pushed the narrative that Russia is trustworthy. You can reason with them. They're not so bad as everybody thinks.
pretlača narratív, že Rusko je dôveryhodné, nie je to s nimi také zlé.
And he was very successful in that.
A bol v tom veľmi úspešný.
Because NATO didn't even see Russia as an enemy anymore.
NATO Rusko už nevidelo ako nepriateľa.
Many European countries did business with Russia.
Mnoho európskych krajín robilo biznis s Ruskom.
And just saw it as a normal partner or a normal, just as another partner.
Videli to ako ďalšieho partnera.
So they were very successful. Putin was very successful in pushing that narrative.
Putin bol veľmi úspešný v pretlačaní
And
tohto
2021
narratívu.
marks the point where Biden says, no, it's not true. We should change this story.
V 2021 je ten bod, kedy Biden hovorí, nie je to tak, musíme tento príbeh zmeniť.
All the European partners or many other nations didn't believe him.
Mnohé iné národy, európski partneri mu neverili.
And it took until February of 2022, the invasion, for those other people to realize that Biden was right.
A zobralo to až do roku 2022, aby si to uvedomili aj ďalší ľudia a národy.
So the elephants turning back on Putin
Takže tie slony sa otočili proti Putinovi.
is what happened in 2021.
To je to, čo sa stalo v 21. roku.
It's where America starts to win the information warfare.
Vtedy Amerika začala vyhrávať tú informačnú vojnu.
And starts to... The narrative that America pushes into the world is now the story that most people believe.
Ten narratív, ktorý Amerika teraz tlačí do sveta, je príbeh, ktorému verí väčšina ľudí.
I think Elder Marco touched on that neatly,
A starší Marko sa toho pekne dotkol.
that the way they have done that and with private companies that helped the United States,
Že spôsob, akým to urobili a tie súkromné spoločnosti, ktoré pomohli Spojeným štátom,
and that's why we believe the American story.
to je dôvod, prečo my veríme tomu americkému príbehu.
The story in the media, the story in social media,
Príbehu v médiách, sociálnych médiách.
is actively pushed.
Tento
Is
príbeh
actively pushed, is brought to us.
sa aktívne tlačí k
And the
nám.
misinformation from Russia and the misinformation from Russian allies is being actively cut down.
A tie dezinformácie z Ruska a ruských spojencov sú aktívne odrezané vlastne.
And the private companies
A súkromné spoločnosti,
working with the American government
ktoré pracujú s americkou vládou,
have play a big part of that.
tam zohrali veľkú rolu.
So I think that's the elephant turning back on its own ranks.
Takže to si myslím, že to sú tie slony, ktoré sa obratili do svojich vlastných radov.
So I had a question about why using Viktor Orban as an Exeter.
Takže mal som otázku, že prečo používam Viktora Orbána ako Exeter.
Because Orban is a European prime minister,
On je európsky predseda vlády.
and how can the EU, in regard to have the EU is not the king of the north.
Európska únia nie je král severu.
So sorry. So yes, I used Viktor Orban as the person starting the discussion about the ceasefire.
Ja som ho použil ako osobu, ktorá vlastne začala tie rokovania o mierových rozhovoroch.
But he's not on his own. He's not doing it on his. He's not doing it alone.
Ale on nie je sám, on to nerobí sám.
I think he is. You could say he's a puppet of Putin.
On je,
As many people call him like a puppet of Putin,
on je babka Putina a jeho tak ľudia nazývajú.
or the useful idiot.
Užitočný idiot.
But I think he's also a puppet of Trump,
Ale tiež je to babka Trumpa.
because Trump doesn't really have power in until now, even in the last year, 2 years. He doesn't really have a position of power.
Trump nemá v skutočnosti moc momentálne, alebo za posledných pár rokov nemal nejakú pozíciu.
But he has been in contact with Orban.
Ale bol v kontakte s Orbánom.
There have been calls, and Orban has been in Florida visiting Trump.
Volali spolu, Orbán bol na Floride, navštevoval Trumpa.
So Orban is the European Trump, so to speak.
Orbán je európsky Trump,
The mini version.
mini verzia.
And he has a position. He's leader of a country. He can do something.
On má pozíciu, je to vodca hnutia, môže niečo urobiť.
So he fires up this discussion.
Takže on spustí túto diskusiu, alebo
And I
odpáli.
think in the quotes that we read yesterday, you could see that as soon as he has a meeting with Trump, 1 or 2 days later, he comes in the media and shares something about it.
V citáte, ktorý sme čítali včera, len o pár dní neskôr príde do médií a niečo o tom zdieľa.
Then he says, well, Trump has a plan and Trump is going to fix this.
A potom povie, Trump má plán, Trump to dá na poriadok.
And he said that because he talked with Trump about it 2 days before.
A potom povie, no sa s Trumpom predtým o tom rozprával, 2 dní predtým.
Viktor Orban took the opportunity of that presidency of the Council of the EU
A Viktor Orbán zobral tú radu tej prezidencie na EÚ,
to be more vocal and to be more visible
aby bol viditeľnejší a taký hlasnejší.
and to push for a ceasefire.
A aby tlačil na uzavretie mieru.
So I don't think Orban is representing the EU, and the EU is not the king of the north.
Orbán nereprezentuje Európsku úniu a Európska únia nie je král severu.
So when I mark Exeter for this story,
Takže keď značím Exeter na tento príbeh,
I would mark it starting in July
tak ja by som to zaznačil začínajúc v júli,
with Orban visiting Putin on, I think it's July 5.
keď Orbán navštevuje Putina, myslím, že to je 5. júl,
And I would mark November 7,
a 7. november značím tu,
when Trump calls Putin.
keď Trump volá Putinovi.
So it starts with Orban, it ends with Trump.
Začína to s Orbánom a končí to s Trumpom.
So if you make Exeter a point
Čiže ak Exeter je bod
on a bigger line,
na tej väčšej línii,
I would mark November 7.
tak by som zaznačil november 7.
And that is Trump and not Orban.
To je Trump a nie Orbán.
Does that make sense?
Dáva zmysel?
Yesterday I discussed a lot of dates relating to Orban.
Včera som hovoril o mnohých dátumoch súvisejúcich s Orbánom.
I'm not saying that every date that I discussed is a waymark.
Nehovorím, že každý dátum, ktorý som diskutoval, je milník.
It was a description of the history.
Bol to popis dejín.
And I don't think I picked the important ones out to establish the waymark yet.
A myslím, že som neukázal tie dôležité, aby som ten milník ustanovil.
So these are the two that I would mark as the important ones, describing Exeter.
Toto sú tie dva, ktoré som zaznačil ako dôležité, popisujúc Exeter.
This is Orban visiting Moscow.
Toto je Orbán, ktorý
And
navštevuje
November 7 is Trump calling Putin. And they both do the same thing.
Moskva a potom Trump volá Putinovi 7.
But both
novembra.
are not in a position to fix the problem.
Oni sú v pozícii dať ten problém na poriadok.
Orban has a position. He's prime minister. He's head of Hungary.
Orbán je predseda vlády Maďarska, má pozíciu,
But as head of Hungary, he cannot do much.
ale ako hlava Maďarska toho nemôžete zmôcť veľa.
He's just one of many. He's not in a position to fix the war in
On nie je
Ukraine.
v pozícii, aby mohol niečo urobiť s tou vojnou na Ukrajine.
And November 7, Trump is not in position either to fix it.
A 7. novembra ani Trump nie je v tejto pozícii.
But they both have set how do you say that? Set this process in motion.
Ale obaja tento proces dali do pohybu.
For it to be finished later in the future.
Na to, aby sa to mohlo dokončiť neskôr v budúcnosti.
And I would say that's then Sunday law.
Ja by som povedal, že to je nedeľný zákon.
Question?
In your story of Panium,
V tvojom príbehu o Paniu
you have the same players at your bookend.
máš tam tých rovnakých hráčov, ktorých ako keby dávaš na
it's the
začiatok
same
a na koniec.
entities at the beginning and the end.
Je to začiatok a koniec. Je to rovnaký
But when you get to Exeter, why is it different?
príbeh. A keď prídeš k Exeteru, prečo je to iné?
Because now it's not the same story.
Teraz to nie je ten istý príbeh.
I think it's the same story.
Podľa mňa je to ten istý príbeh.
Yeah, sorry. So this is Viktor Orban.
Toto je Viktor Orbán.
Okay. So you're saying, oh, maybe that's even here. So you're saying at Panium, February, it's the same player as in October.
Čiže ty hovoríš, že vo februári je ten istý hráč ako v oktobri.
Yes?
Áno.
And then you're going to do that again when you say Panium Sunday law.
A potom vlastne to isté spravíš, keď ideme od Pania po nedeľný zákon.
So you say Panium, Sunday law, that's both Biden.
It's America, Ukraine, Russia, America, Ukraine, Russia.
Okay?
And then for Exeter, you have different entities.
A keď ideme od Pania po nedeľný zákon, tam máme Ukrajinu, Rusko, ale keď sme pri Exeteri, tam máš dve rozdielne zložky.
Different to the other ones.
Prečo je to iné?
But
might have the
isn't
same
Panium, Sunday law different players? You say America now, but it's Biden there and it's Trump at the Sunday law.
A nie je pri Paniu iný hráč? Pri Paniu je Biden a pri nedeľnom zákone je Trump.
It's Biden at Panium, it's Trump at the Sunday law.
Je to Biden pri Paniu, ale je to Trump pri nedeľnom
What I
zákone.
understood you were making to establish Ukraine and not Syria or anyone else is that it's a story about Ukraine and Russia, America, Ukraine.
Je to príbeh o Ukrajine a je to boj medzi Amerikou a Ruskou.
Your point to be when you brought the Ukraine story
Tá pointa, keď prinášaš príbeh o Ukrajine,
was the importance to see Ukraine at the beginning and Ukraine at the end.
je dôležité vidieť Ukrajinu na začiatku a Ukrajinu na konci.
And that's why it couldn't be Syria.
A preto by tam nepatrila Sýria.
And so if those are the players we're looking for,
Takže keď toto sú tí hráči, na ktorých pozeráme,
The story is about Ukraine.
ten príbeh je o Ukrajine.
So now with Exeter,
Pri Exeteri teraz,
could you explain why now you have different players?
vysvetli, prečo tam máš rozdielných hráčov.
You want to answer that question? Or you're...
I want to ask a question to this. Maybe it will help.
Okay.
Ja sa chcem k tomu ešte spýtať otázku.
My question would be, do we have to differentiate the players from the geography?
Musíme robiť rozdiel medzi tými hráčmi z hľadiska geografie.
So that's the same question that he has?
Je to tá istá otázka, ako má on?
It's to question his question.
To je otázka k jeho otázke.
Okay. Well, I see what you're saying. So I'm responding to Curtis.
Ja teraz odpovedám Curtisovi.
I see your point,
Ja chápem tvoju pointu,
but at the same time, I know I mark Viktor Orbán,
ja viem, že tu značím Viktora Orbána,
but I also said I don't think this is his work.
Ja si nemyslím, že toto je jeho dielo.
He is just the puppet of Trump.
On je len bábka Trumpa.
So he is the one doing the dirty work because Trump isn't really able to.
On je ten, ktorý robí tú špinavú prácu, lebo Trump naozaj nemôže.
I chose November 7.
Vybral som si 7. november.
I could have chosen December 8
Mohol som si zobrať o december 8.
when Orbán had his last phone call with Putin.
Tam mal Orbán posledný hovor s Putinom.
And I don't think that makes a big difference in the story.
Myslím, že to nerobí taký veľký rozdiel v tom príbehu.
But I think November 7 is more significant. And that's
Ale
why
myslím si, že ten 7. november je významnejší.
okay. So, most people are concerned about the internal things.
Väčšina ľudí sa obáva o tie vnútorné veci.
I understand that.
Tomu rozumiem.
So yesterday I said I'm putting out I'm putting out a line regarding Ukraine regarding King of the North, King of the South.
Ja sem dávam líniu ohľadne Ukrajiny, kráľa severu, kráľa juhu.
And I'm saying that gives a certain structure.
A ja hovorím, že to nám dáva určitú štruktúru.
And this structure can help us to identify other lines.
A tá štruktúra nám môže pomôcť identifikovať ďalšie linie.
How do you make like this straight line? Because it's... Ah, that looks better. Thank you. So this structure can help us to understand another line, for example, the internal structure.
Táto štruktúra nám pomôže porozumieť tej vnútornej štruktúre.
The internal America story.
Ten vnútorný príbeh Ameriky.
Or the internal story within the movement.
Alebo ten vnútorný príbeh v hnutí.
So I think for 2022,
Takže 2022
I think we generally accepted that the Vesper study
sme všeobecne prijali, že
of Elder
štúdium
Ted's
Vespers
were the increase of knowledge
um,
for this movement.
to bol rast poznania pre hnutie.
It was from February to June.
To bolo od februára do júna.
Arjan, related, there's a question back there.
For you? Oh.
So it's a. Can you hear me?
We cannot
Okay.
hear you from here.
The microphone is just for the people at home, I think.
Okay. So it's someone asking on Zoom if the. I say it in French. Someone can translate in English.
No.
Okay. And the 17th of July declare on Fox News that it will. Sorry. That he will. Okay, I repeat. It seems to me that the 17th of July.
Zdá sa mi, že 17. júla
Trump declared on Fox
Trump
News
povedal na Fox
that
News,
that he will deal with the problem of Ukraine in one
že
day.
sa s problémom Ukrajiny vysporiada v jeden deň.
So we can see Trump as well at the beginning at the place of Orban.
Takže vidíme aj na začiatku Trumpa miesto Orbána.
Thank you. So the person at Zoom says,
Takže človek na Zoome hovorí,
you can put Trump here as well.
že sa môžeme dať aj Trumpa.
So you either have Trump, Orban, Orban,
Máme Trump, Orbán,
and I
Orbán,
chose Viktor Orban, Trump.
alebo Viktor Orbán, Trump.
That's what I got from what you said. Is that correct? That you can mark Trump at the beginning.
Že môžeme Trumpa zaznačiť aj na začiatok.
So I wasn't going into this internal line.
Ja som nešiel do tejto vnútornej línie.
The increase, I think it's a generally accepted. It's general accepted that 2022, the Vesper series of Elder Test, was the increase of knowledge.
Všeobecne sa príjma, že 2022 je rast poznania od staršej test.
I think the discussion was what are the external events connected to that in that same time period.
A diskusia bola, že ktoré sú tie vonkajšie udalosti vlastne spojené s týmto obdobím.
So then you make a line for Ukraine, what I did, or you can make a line that is related to.
Čiže môžete urobiť líniu pre Ukrajinu, to som spravil ja, a môžete urobiť líniu, ktorá sa týka
And you mark June 24, the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Zvrhnutia Roe v. Wade, 24. jún.
But that's a story in itself. It's a line in itself.
Ale to je príbeh sám o sebe, línia sama o sebe.
I'm not a specialist in that one.
V tomto nie som špecialista.
I know that in November and December of 2021,
Viem, že november a december 2021
the SCOTUS was working on this court case. And they had I think the oral hearings.
Scotus pracoval na tomto súdnom prípade a mali vlastne vypočúvania.
So in June 24, they had the decision.
A 24. júna dali rozhodnutie.
So that's the two way marks that I would mark.
A to je milník, ktorý ja by som naznačil.
And I don't have any for these so far. So people have been asking me about those lines, those stories.
Ľudia sa ma pýtajú na tieto línie a príbehy.
And what I only did this weekend is giving us this upper line structure.
To, čo ja som spravil tento víkend, je, že som nám dal túto líniu, čo tu máme, túto štruktúru.
I'm suggesting that this is the structure that we use
Ja hovorím, že toto je štruktúra, ktorú my používame,
to understand other lines as well.
aby sme pochopili aj ďalším líniám.
So people have been asking, what do you do with Exeter, the formalization of the message?
No a čo potom je Exeter, formovanie posolstva
If that is 2024,
2024?
because a lot happened in 2024 in the movement.
V hnutí sa 2024 toho mnohého stalo.
Question?
When you're done with your point, I would have a question about Boston. But only if you say you
Okay, we'll do that then. Yeah. So, was there another? Oh. Yeah.
From what I understood, you've said we need to use the story of the king of the north and the king of the south.
Z toho, čo som porozumel, že si povedal, že musíme použiť príbeh kráľa severu a juhu,
To guide us in all the other decisions we make.
aby nás to viedlo v tých ostatných rozhodnutiach, ktoré robíme.
About where we're going to place the waymarks and stuff.
O tom, kde umiestnime tie milníky.
No, I'm not saying that the king of the north, king of the south is more important than the other lines.
Nehovorím, že kráľ severu a juhu je dôležitejší ako tie ostatné línie.
It's just the first line that I could kind of complete from the beginning to the end.
Je to prvá línia, ktorú viem dokončiť od začiatku do konca.
That would make sense to me.
To by mi dávalo zmysel.
You can do it with an abortion line if you like. If you have a line, whatever, on the theme of abortion, and you can make it from the beginning to the end. That can become the structure for the rest.
Keď spravíme líniu potratov od začiatku do konca, aj to môže byť samostatná štruktúra. Asi je to retorická otázka.
I guess this is a rhetorical question. Why have you chosen this line?
Prečo si vybral túto líniu?
And the second question is, why are you fielding questions about other lines?
A druhá otázka.
Why are you answering questions
Prečo
about other
odpovedáš
lines?
otázky na tie iné línie?
Which is another way of saying, why are people asking you about other lines?
Či prečo sa ťa ľudia pýtajú na tie iné línie?
So two questions. Why have you chosen, it's related to Curtis's question, I think. Why have you chosen this line
Čiže otázka, prečo si vybral túto líniu?
as opposed, you said I could have chosen any line.
Oproti tým ostatným, lebo si hovoril, že si mohol zobrať ho ktorúkoľvek.
Why this one? Why not another one?
Prečo túto a nie inú?
And why are people asking about other lines?
A prečo sa ľudia pýtajú na tie ďalšie?
Okay. So I have chosen this line.
Ja som si túto líniu vybral.
Didn't feel like a choice or something.
Ja som to nepovažoval, že si vyberám z niečoho.
But it describes a history where it's a history where I think we have an understanding of the end.
To sú dejiny, kde máme porozumenie toho konca.
The death of the king of the south. So you have a waymark that is, you don't know how, but you know we have a death at the end.
Nevieme, ako sa to udeje, ale na konci je smrť.
And I think 2021 to the Sunday law, or for 2021 to the time where we're living in today,
A 2021 až do nedeľného zákona alebo do času, v ktorom žijeme dnes,
and you just follow the news,
keď sledujete tie správy,
I think this is the most obvious story to follow because you're just
toto je najjasnejší príbeh, ktorý môžete nasledovať.
because there's so much information about it. There's a lot of information available,
Lebo je o tom mnoho informácií vonku.
and media is talking about it every day.
Média o tom každý deň hovoria.
And we know it is prophetic because it is a proxy war. It's a war between the king of the north and the king of the south.
Vieme, že je to prorocké, je to boj medzi kráľom severu a juhu.
It's a bad answer to your question, but
Viem, že je to zlá odpoveď.
yeah, but he's responding. Yeah. And why people ask? Why do people ask about the other lines?
Prečo sa ľudia pýtajú na tie ďalšie línie?
Because they want to test my line.
Asi chcú preskúšať tú moju líniu.
If you say 2024 is Exeter,
Ak poviem, že 2024 je Exeter,
where's the Exeter message then in
tak kde je
2024?
posolstvo Exeteru potom?
Or because many people have a understanding of the internal line. They have a picture of it
Mnoho ľudí má porozumenie tej vnútornej línie, majú o tom nejaký obraz
based on the studies that have been presented.
na základe štúdií, ktoré boli prezentované.
I challenge them now,
A ja som tým dal teraz výzvu.
so they're now questioning. That's my words. They think, okay, this makes sense, this line that he presented,
Tak si povedia, dobre, toto, čo nám tu ukazuješ,
but
dáva
it challenges
zmysel.
my view on the other line.
Ale mne to dáva výzvu na tú moju druhú líniu.
So I want to hear from him how he thinks about this challenge that I'm dealing with now.
Tak chcem vedieť, čo si myslíš o tejto výzve, ktorej ja teraz čelím.
So I think that's what people ask me
Myslím, že preto sa ma na to pýtajú.
about other lines. Of course.
Môžem k tomu pridať?
Oh, no.
What I wanted to point out
To, čo som chcela poukázať,
is that the reason this line has been chosen,
Je,
if
že
you
dô-
chose this line,
je, že dôvod, prečo bola vybratá táto línia,
is because if we call it America or internal,
je, že keď to nazveme Amerika alebo niečo vnútorné,
all the symbology that's being used there to create those lines
všetká symbolika, ktorá sa tam používa, aby sa utvorili tieto línie,
are all new ideas.
to sú nové myšlienky.
We're reinventing terms.
My tie pojmy na novo teraz
So the threefold union
vynaliezávame, čiže trojité
is
spojenectvo
now being redefined in a way that it's never been done before.
je predefinované tak, ako predtým nebolo.
So how do you know these new definitions are correct?
Ako vieme, že tieto nové definície sú správne?
The rise of a dictator
Povstanie diktátora
is now being defined as the failure of the Republican Party.
je definované ako zlyhanie republikánskej strany.
This movement never taught things like that before.
A toto hnutie nikdy neučilo veci ako predtým. Takéto.
So how do you know these new ideas are correct?
Čiže ako vieme, že tieto nové myšlienky sú správne?
It seems to me,
Zdá sa mi,
when I heard what you were presenting,
keď som to, čo som počul, keď si prezentoval,
you didn't say it directly,
nepovedal si to priamo.
but if you go to the Time of the magazine,
Keď pôjdeme do času konca, časopisu času konca,
definitions that are given there
tie definície, ktoré sú tam
for
dané,
Daniel 11, just say 40 and 41,
Daniel 11, 40, 41,
you haven't changed that.
to si nezmenil.
You've used established terms, ideas and models
si použil tie ustanovené pojmy, modely,
that I think we should all believe are correct.
a myslím, že všetci veríme, že sú správne.
Separate to the details
Oddelenie od tých detailov,
about the increase of knowledge of the formalization.
ohľadne rastu poznania a formovania.
We know that line
Poznáme tú líniu,
and the symbols haven't changed.
tie symboly sa nezmenili.
If we were to create a line of abortion,
Keby sme mali utvoriť líniu
you
potratov,
have no way of cross-referencing that to another story that we all know is correct.
tak to nemáme s čím porovnať, že s nejakým iným príbehom, že máme to správne.
That's why I think that line was chosen.
Preto si myslím, že bola vybratá táto línia.
And the second answer to my question,
A druhá odpoveď k mojej otázke.
people shouldn't be asking, will
Ľudia,
explain the internal Exeter story.
ľudia by sa nemali pýtať na to, že vieš mi vysvetliť vnútorný príbeh Exeteru,
So we know that your line is correct.
aby vedeli, že či tvoja línia je pravdivá.
That's not how we're supposed to be playing with lines.
Takto sa nemáme zahrávať s líniami.
The line that you've proposed
Línia, ktorú ty si navrhol,
either stands or falls on its own merits.
ona buď padne, alebo obstojí na tých svojich vlastných merits, na tých svojich vlastných
You're using
základoch.
that line to check another line.
Ty nepotrebuješ, aby túto líniu ti skontrolovala nejaká iná línia.
The line that you're checking can't be used to check your own line.
Tá línia, ktorú ty kontroluješ, nemôže byť použitá na to, aby skontrolovala tvoju
So
vlastnú
everybody who's
líniu.
asking you questions about the line you're supposed to be checking,
Čiže keď sa ťa niekto pýta otázky o línii, ktoré ty máš kontrolovať,
to prove the veracity of your line,
aby preukázali pravdivosť tej tvojej línie,
it seems to me they don't understand what you're actually doing.
tak sa mi zdá, že nerozumejú, čo ty robíš.
Question about Boston. I had a quote. So I have a question about Boston.
Mám otázku o Bostone.
And I don't know if you remember, but we had a conversation about Panium in 2023 in Austria.
Neviem, či si pamätáš, v Rakúsku sme sa rozprávali o pániu.
It was a group discussion and you were part of it.
Bola to skupinová diskusia a ty si bol pri tom.
And we were brainstorming about Panium.
A tak sme sa rozprávali o tom pániu.
And in this discussion, we took the build up at the border.
A my sme sa tam pozerali na to obobstávanie tej hranice.
And we took the battle up till the point of the invasion.
A sme to zobrali vlastne až do bodu tej invázie.
Because at the day of the invasion, it was clear that Putin didn't get what he wanted.
Lebo v tom čase tej invázie bolo jasné, že Putin nedostal to, čo chcel.
He lost the battle.
On prehral v tej vojne,
But that was
v tej bitke.
our discussion back then.
Vtedy sme sa o tom takto rozprávali.
And what I'm understanding you do now is that you don't consider that
A ja tomu rozumiem tak, že toto teraz za to nepovažuješ
as part of Boston,
ako súčasť Bostonu.
and you only consider the build-up
A
as Boston.
považuješ len to vybudovanie ako Boston.
Could you elaborate a bit?
Vedel by si to trošku rozobrať? I know the military build-up is taking place in the same time period.
Ja viem, že to budovanie sa deje v tom istom čase, to budovanie armády,
But I think Panium is not the military build-up.
ale Panium nie je budovanie armády.
It is the information war that Putin loses as soon as Biden stands up.
Je to informačná vojna, ktorú Putin prehráva, keď sa Biden postaví.
And that's about the military buildup, of course.
A to je o tom budovaní armády.
Because Putin says, no, we're just doing a training there.
Lebo Putin povie, nie, my iba trénujeme.
And Biden says, no, you're going to invade. You're going to do it from the north, from the east, and you're going to run the planet in a few days.
A Biden hovorí, nie, vy napadnete aj od severu, aj východu a prejdete do Kieva za pár dní.
And they start to share that story and they push that narrative.
A oni zdieľajú tento príbeh a tlačia ten narratív.
And the narrative of the USA starts to win it from the Russian version.
A ten narratív Spojených štátov začína vyhrávať nad Ruskom.
And that's what I mark in October. Mark starts in October. I think that's Panium.
To ja značím, že to začína v oktobri, to je Panium.
Not the military. It's all connected with the military buildup. The military buildup itself is not Panium.
Je to spojené s tým budovaním tej armády, ale samotná tá armáda to nie je Panium.
Do you separate, you detach Panium from Boston then? You say the two different things, which we need.
Ty si oddelil
Which
si
we need to
Panium
consider
od Bostonu? Sú to dve rozdielne veci?
Fulfillment of Panium with its details.
Naplnenie Pania a jeho
And
detaily?
then Boston, which is the arrival of a message for a new dispensation.
A Boston ako príchod posolstva pre novú epochu.
But that's an internal arrival of a message.
A ty z toho robíš vonkajšiu vec v tvojej linii.
You want to respond on this? Yeah, that's fine.
I was just going to say what Arjan's been saying, that
Ja som chcel povedať, že to, čo hovorí Arjan,
there's different stories that you tell at a waymark.
že sú rozdielne príbehy, ktoré hovoríš na milníkoch.
And at the date that you give that waymark,
A ten dátum, ktorý dáš tomu milníku,
you'll never see all the stories achieved at that date.
nikdy neuvidíme v tom dátume, že sa všetky príbehy dosiahnu.
So the story about a message arriving,
Takže príbeh o tom prichádzajúcom posolstve,
the story of America's war against itself,
je to príbeh Ameriky samej proti sebe
and then the story of America against Russia,
a príbeh Ameriky proti Rusku.
are all different stories that will have different dates.
To sú všetko rozdielne príbehy, ktoré majú rozdielne dátumy.
I want to respond on Tamina. I had a moment to think.
Ja by som chcel
Because-
odpovedať Tamine.
Because you mark Boston as a beginning of something that you don't really see.
Značíš
as a
Boston
message,
ako
but-
začiatok niečoho, čo nevidíš.
And I think I talked about that. And I think we talked about it yesterday evening here in this group discussion.
Myslím, že sme včera večer tu o tom hovorili na tej skupine.
Well, when you mark 2021
Kde značíš 2021
as an Exeter
ako,
for the Sunday law,
ako Exeter pre nedeľný zákon,
then at the Sunday law we mark the rise of the USA as this unilateral power. You could say, I think yesterday we called it, what was it? No, not this discussion.
A tam pri nedeľnom zákone značíme USA, ktoré stáva ako
So USA
unipolárna
has
moc,
power.
univerzálna.
You could say MAGA.
Majú moc, môžeme povedať MAGA,
That's Trump's version. This is Trump.
to je Trumpova verzia.
What we said here is
To, čo
this
sme
is
hovorili
also
tu,
MAGA.
aj toto je
This
MAGA,
is Biden.
to je Biden.
Biden restores U.S. credibility.
On obnovuje dôveryhodnosť Spojených štátov.
wins, defeats the king of the south in the information war.
Porazil kráľa juhu v informačnej vojne.
It's all to make America great.
On chce urobiť Ameriku veľkou.
This was Biden.
To je Biden.
And I'm saying this is the mini version of what is going to take place at the Sunday law.
To je mini verzia toho, čo sa stane pri nedeľnom zákone.
Maybe you can't see it so much. It was just a White House meeting, and you can read about it in the media.
Možno to môžeme vidieť ako stretnutie v Bielom dome, prečítame si o tom v médiách.
So that is Boston. It's
To je
there,
Boston.
but it develops into MAGA version Trump.
A to sa rozvinie do MAGA verzie Trumpa.
It's also Exeter at the same time. So with the same event
In our lines, depending what line it is, being Boston or Exeter.
Yeah, this is a Boston, this is an Exeter. Sorry.
Je to zároveň aj Boston, aj Exeter.
Yes, it's a Boston, it's an Exeter, but Boston it develops.
Pri Bostone sa to rozvíja.
I don't know if that answers. Helps.
It doesn't answer the invasion question I had about our discussion in Austria, but we can also talk afterwards.
I don't remember. Well,
Ja som nedostala odpoveď na to, čo sme sa rozprávali v Rakúsku.
what was the point about the invasion that we made?
Aká bola tá pointa tej invázie?
Back then we talked about Panium
Vtedy sme hovorili o Paniu
and when Panium would take place,
a kedy sa deje Panium,
or how long the battle was.
alebo ako dlho sa deje tá vojna.
The conclusion of that discussion was the invasion itself was the end of the battle.
A záver tej diskusie bolo, že samotná tá invázia bol koniec tej bitky.
Because Putin essentially didn't get what he was planning to get.
Lebo Putin nedostal to, čo plánoval.
I don't get that point because he didn't get it. But later on, I mean, it was not on the day of the invasion that he didn't get it, or I don't get that point.
When he invaded,
Yeah.
Keď
he
napadol
thought
Ukrajinu,
within hours or short days, he was thinking to have the Ukraine government collapse.
on chcel za pár dní, aby skolabovala tá ukrajinská vláda a to sa mu nepodarilo.
And that didn't
To
happen.
sa nestalo
And he gets stuck in this long war.
a zasekol sa v tej dlhej vojne.
And him not reaching that goal, we thought, could mark the end of Panium.
A to, že on toto nedosiahol, by mohlo značiť koniec Pánia.
The king of the south loses.
Prehra kráľa juhu.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't remember the discussion, but I know the thought.
Nepamätám si tú diskusiu, ale poznám túto myšlienku.
And that's what I think I discussed in my first presentation,
A myslím si, že som o tom diskutoval v mojej prvej prezentácii,
that even the Weimar Pantheon
že aj tento milník
wasn't really settled.
Pánia nebolo úplne ustanovené.
Elder Tess did several presentations on it,
Staršia test na to urobil niekoľko prezentácií,
but I think never finished it completely.
ale myslím, že to nikdy úplne
So
nedokončila.
I think that was the discussion that was going on. Where does Panium end?
To bola diskusia, ktorá sa diala, kedy končí Pánium.
Does it continue into 2022? People thought it even continues in 2023. I talked to people a few weeks ago that still thought we were in Panium.
Pokračuje to do 2022. Ľudia si mysleli, ešte sme v Pániu, alebo ako je to.
So that waymark wasn't established.
Ten milník nebol ustanovený.
where do you mark the deadly wound of the king of the south?
kde značíme smrteľnú ranu kráľa juhu.
But the thing that Elder Tess had established was the beginning of Panium or Beneventum.
Ale to, čo staršia Tess ustanovila, bol začiatok toho Pania.
When you look at Beneventum, it is a story about elephants.
Keď sa pozrieme na Beneventum, to je ten príbeh o slonoch.
And it started with this warfare by Biden
A začínajúc v tomto boji,
and yesterday evening in the discussion it was said Biden poked in the eye of Putin.
včera sa v diskusii povedalo, že Biden pichol medzi oči Putina,
Because two pro-Russian television stations were shut down.
lebo boli uzavreté tie 3 proruské televízne stanice.
The oligarch was arrested, etc.
A bol zatknutý ten oligarcha.
And I think it was an information war at the beginning
To bola informačná vojna na začiatku,
because they started to change the story or the narrative in Ukraine.
začali sa zdieľať o ten narratív na Ukrajine.
So that was the beginning of the battle.
To bol začiatok tej bitky.
They wanted to get rid of pro-Russian politicians or news outlets.
Chceli sa zbaviť tých proruských politikov a správ,
Or at least the ones that were corrupt.
tých skorumpovaných.
So they started to change this I keep saying narrative.
Takže začali meniť tento narratív
From pro-Russian to more pro-Europe.
z proruského na proeurópsky.
Okay. So the point is, I'm making it. It starts with Beneventum starts this way, so it should also end. It cannot end with a literal war.
To, čo som ja chcel povedať, že keď Beneventum začína takto, tak nemôže skončiť s nejakou doslovnou vojnou.
It begins with an information war.
Začína s informačnou
It ends with an information
a končí s informačnou.
war element. So that's why I mark October and not the literal invasion.
Preto značím október a nie tú inváziu.
Okay. Yep. Oh, my laptop even turned off. Any other questions?
Ešte sú nejaké otázky?
Buddy, you have a... Yeah, he knows what it is.
Yeah.
What is it?
Sorry, but I asked you this question before.
Okay.
Yesterday it was not recording, and I don't remember
Oh.
the answer. So can you explain again why you took different examples in different lines, as I remember, about
Môžeš vysvetliť, prečo si zobral rozdielne príklady na rozdielnych líniách?
what was Exeter?
Yeah.
O tom, čo bol Exeter?
So yesterday I did this.
Včera som spravil toto.
I went to several Exeters
Išiel som k niekoľkým Exeterom
and tried to find a common characteristic
a snažil som sa nájsť ich spoločnú vlastnosť
for the external events.
pre tie vonkajšie udalosti.
So we went to 1996,
Takže sme išli do 96.,
2012,
12,
2018,
18,
2021,
21
and again 2021.
A zase 21.
And I think Raquel had a good point.
Myslím, že Rachel mala dobrú pointu.
Because when I did this,
Keď som toto urobil,
before I go there, I went to those Exeters to look for common characteristic.
išiel som do tých Exeterov, aby som našiel spoločnú vlastnosť.
And Raquel said, you are studying, let's call it the Ukraine line, or the King of the North, King of the South line.
A Rachel povedala, ty študuješ kráľa severu a juhu,
But all the Exeters that you looked at were not necessarily belonging to that story.
ale tie Exetery, na ktoré si sa pozeral, sa netýkali toho príbehu.
So I went to Islam here.
Takže tu som hovoril o islame,
I went to America internal here.
tu som hovoril o Amerike, vnútornom vývoji.
She said, why not? Why don't you go back to the Exeters of the same story?
A ona povedala, prečo nejdeš na Exetery toho jedného príbehu?
First of all,
Za prvé,
no, that's not a good. I don't think it's necessary.
nemyslím si, že je to potrebné,
Because every Exeter should, I think we should have most characteristics on all Exeters. What do you say? Sorry, I'm just struggling with my English. I'm taking a concept of Exeter
beriem si koncept Exeteru
and look at other waymarks to see if I find other characteristics.
a pozriem sa na ďalšie milníky, aby som videl, či tam nájdem také charakteristiky.
Okay.
Ty hovoríš,
Good question.
že ona dala dobrú otázku.
Why you haven't gone to other Exeters on this story or this line?
Yeah.
Prečo si nešiel k iným Exeterom na tejto linii?
Which ones would they be?
Well,
Ktoré by to boli?
I want to go there. In 2001, I don't know a story or a line in 2001, an event.
Ja neviem ten príbeh, napríklad v 2001, tú líniu.
I don't know an event in 2001 regarding the battle or the struggle between the King of the North and the King of the South.
Neviem to tam ohľadne boja medzi kráľom severu a juhu.
2014, I think same thing.
2014 takisto.
That starts to become more visible in the 2014, I guess. No, 2016, it starts at Ipsos.
Nie, 2016 to je Ipsus.
If you start doing Exeter that way, you're going to have to do every single waymark and identify every single one with that one line from 1989 to the Sunday law.
Keď začneš takto robiť Exetery,
And you're saying that's valid to do that.
budeš musieť zobrať pre každú jednu líniu, teda pre každú to obdobie, každý Exeter na tú jednu líniu. A ty hovoríš, že takto to máme robiť, že to bude takto platné?
That's not what I wanted to do when I did this.
You didn't do that. I'm asking, is it valid to even do that? Because you've said it is.
I thought about it.
Zdá sa ti, že to tak máme robiť? Ty si to tak nespravil, ale myslíš, že je to tak platné?
Why I said it was making sense to me
Mne to dávalo zmysel,
is because it can look random. I can just pick and choose the Exodus that I want or the characteristics that I want that suit my.
takto to vyzerá
Yes.
náhodne. Ja si ako keby beriem vlastnosti, ktoré mi nejak vyhovujú.
So if you want to be less picking and choosing and just take the line that you have, That's why I thought it would perhaps make my point stronger.
Ja som si
I'm
myslel,
not
že
saying that it's
možno by to bola
necessary.
silnejšia pointa, ale nehovorím, že je to nutné.
My question is it correct to say that all the previous Exeters, all the previous Bostons and Concords are all on this line, and we can identify every single one to bring us up to Sunday law on the line of the King of the North and the King of the South?
Je to správne povedať, že každý jeden Exeter musí byť na tejto línii, že, ktoré nás vlastne vedú k tej línii k nedelnému zákonu?
I haven't got a position I'm asking, because you've already just said yes, because it's a good question.
Ty si povedal, že to je dobrá otázka, čiže si s tým súhlasil.
I said yes because I think my point, the goal that I had with this, I think my point would be stronger if I would, if possible, use King of the North, King of the South Exeters.
Ak by to bolo
So you're saying
možné,
yes,
tak tá moja pointa by
they
bola
exist.
silnejšia, keby som...
No, if they exist, I should use them.
Do you believe they exist?
No, I don't think they exist.
So it's not a good question. I know I'm rushing.
Takže to nie je dobrá otázka, lebo oni neexistujú, tie Exetery na
A
každej
good
tej
question
epoche.
means a valid question. You're bought into the idea that you had every single Exeter on that one story.
Ty si uveril tej myšlienke, že by si mohol mať každý Exeter na tom jednom príbehu,
As opposed to saying,
miesto toho, aby
I
sme
don't believe you can do that.
povedali, že neverím, že toto sa dá urobiť.
Just clarifying what your position is.
Ja len ujasním tú tvoju pozíciu.
You believe you can do it or you can't do it.
No, I don't think you can do it for all. But I don't think I have been careful or secure enough, and I could perhaps have done several different. And that's something I think I can look back into. But I'm sure 1996 or 2012 or something are no Exeters with regard to the King of the North.
Translation.
I'm so sorry.
Asking for.
Uvedomujem si, že sú tam ešte nejaké ďalšie, možno by som mohol nejaké urobiť, ale určite napríklad od 96 do 2001 by som
wanted to
nevedel.
ask, I understood before that when you draw a line and you take a dispensation and you take a history.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Čiže keď nakreslíš líniu, zoberieš epochu, dejiny.
To review.
I
I
understood
understood before
Ja som tomu tak porozumela,
that when you draw a line or a dispensation
keď nakreslíš líniu alebo epochu,
where I want to clarify a point or a history,
kde chcem ujasniť nejaký bod alebo dejiny,
I have to see this history developing from the beginning. That means
musím vidieť, ako sa to vyvíja od začiatku.
from 1989 till the Sunday law, and then we would see also we were supposed to end up that history.
I think that's the same discussion.
Od 89. ponedelný zákon, že mali by sme vedieť spraviť začiatok a koniec tých dejín.
I think that's the same question or the same discussion that we had yesterday evening after the study.
Túto istú diskusiu sme
in
mali
regard to
včera večer
1814.
po štúdii.
You're looking for a concept,
Ty hľadaš nejaký koncept
and you look in other places where you can find the same thing.
a pozeráš sa na iné miesta, kde môžeš nájsť tú istú vec.
So, I'm just looking for the concept of Exeter externally.
Pozeráme sa na koncept Exeteru vonkajšie.
Of course, in Exeter you only understand when you understand the whole story.
Exeteru rozumieme len vtedy, keď rozumieme celý príbeh.
I just didn't do that because of time. And I don't think it's, for this point, it was very relevant to do that.
Ja som to neurobil pre čas a pre túto pointu si myslím ani, že to nie je relatívne.
Last one. Finger? Yeah?
I was just going to say this, doing it this way seems stronger to me than what Raquel suggests.
Mne sa to týmto spôsobom zdá silnejšie ako to, čo hovorí Raquel.
Because I would suggest that is line upon line, compare and contrasting.
No my vlastne dávame do porovnania protikladu línia na líniu.
I might be wrong, but I understood what Raquel says. She tried to have a thread. She was threading.
A to, čo robí Raquel, je, že ona chce mať tú niť.
Okay, so 10 minutes ago I was told that we should stop in 10 minutes, so I think we leave the discussion for after.
Takže bolo mi povedané už pred 10 minútami, že by sme mali o 10 minút skončiť, takže to asi necháme na
But
potom.
thank you for your questions, and I didn't answer all the questions also that I received.
Ja som nezodpovedal na všetky otázky, ktoré som
but
dostal,
perhaps they can be answered in the future.
ale môžeme ich zodpovedať v budúcnosti.
Let's pray.
Poďme sa pomodliť.
Dear Lord,
Drahý Pane,
you see, you've been seeing us having good discussions.
ty vidíš, že my máme dobré diskusie.
Lord, I feel blessed being part of this movement,
Sa cítim požehnaný, že som súčasťou tohto hnutia,
that we are allowed to have opinions and have discussions,
a že môžeme mať názory a diskusie,
that you are a God that want to help us develop our understandings ourselves.
a ty nám pomáhaš vyvíjať porozumenie nám samým,
And that you lead us in it. We pray that you continue to lead us in getting a better understanding of the times we're living in.
Ja sa modlím, aby si naďalej nás viedol v porozumení tých časov, v ktorých žijeme.
That we all may come in unity on the important messages.
Aby sme mohli prísť do jednoty ohľadne dôležitých posolstiev.
I pray for the movement worldwide,
A ťa prosím, aby hnutie povstalo.
the leaders, the ministry leaders, the continental leaders,
Prosím ťa za služobnostných vedúcich kontinentálnych.
continental leaders. I pray that you bless them all in guiding and directing the flock.
Ja ťa prosím, aby si ich všetkých požehnal v tom, ako sa keď budeš usmerňovať to stádo.
In a way that you would do in a way that you do with us.
Spôsobom, ako ty robíš s nami.
I pray that you continue to guide and direct us.
Prosím, aby si nás naďalej viedol a
In Jesus'
usmerňoval.
name.
Mene Ježiša.
Amen.
Amen.